Wait, remember 3 Delivery? It was a Canadian and US joint project that came out on both Nicktoons in the US and YTV in Canada in 2008. It was a fusion of magic, food, and kung fu. Since it has been a while since we took a look at some Nicktoons specifically from the Nicktoons Network, aka the Nickelodeon sister network, aka the Nicktoons Graveyard, I thought it would be fun to revisit a show that I don't remember too much aside from the look of it. So today we're going to dive into another one-season wonder, so if you enjoy the video, you better subscribe. Let's take a look at 3 Delivery. Welcome back to the 25 Days of Fringe-Miss, where there's going to be brand new videos every single day from December 1st to December 25th. Hop aboard. 3 Delivery follows a group of employees at Wu's Garden, a Chinese restaurant located in Chinatown. Toby, Sue, and Sid. Toby, voiced by Robbie Sharp, is a goofball with a big appetite, but despite that, comes from a pretty rough and dark past that is clearly contrasted with his attitude in the show, often not really taking a lot of things too seriously. Sue, voiced by Stephanie Sheh, has probably the toughest spirit and exterior, always keeping focus on the task at hand and rarely lets her guard down, showing the other side of her. Sid, voiced by Johnny Bosch, is the cool one of the group, usually playing things out with the least amount of humor but has some great response and retorts no matter when, where, or what is going on. All 3 of them were adopted by Nana, voiced by Nancy Wu, with Sid and Sue being siblings together in foster care and Toby who was on his own. She takes them in with the goal of raising them and training them for protecting Chinatown, and by extension, the world. Her herself has some incredible fighting skills as well as magic skills, and operates at a restaurant called Wu Garden within Chinatown. And instead of just having the 3 adopted kids work there and complete deliveries on bikes, they are all trained and prepared to fight back against the show's evil antagonist Kong Lee, voiced by Lex Woodis. The main plot revolves around a magical cookbook that contains magical recipes that, if fallen into the wrong hands, can be used for mass chaos. The 3 who do the deliveries, hence the name of the show, are equally as responsible for helping track down the missing recipe pages and to try and keep them out of Kong Lee's hands, who, if he obtains the complete magical cookbook, can escape the barrier that traps him in Chinatown to then cause further destruction to the entire world. He used to be just like Nana, and was a student in his younger years as well as being friends with her, but in the sake of ultimate power and just pure evilness, he wanted it all for himself. Now, there are a few other characters in the show like Calvin, Nana, or her real name Mai's son, who owns the restaurant, as well as his son Barney, who works there also. So while our main 3 have a certain task with learning how to and then actually protecting Chinatown, they have this other relationship with Calvin and Barney who really focus solely on the restaurant. There's quite a lot going on, but it for the most part flows in between work, the real work, and expanding the lore pretty well. But how did this fun, action-packed, and stylized show come to be?
Surprise! Watch 3 Delivery, Thursday at 7, only on Nicktoons Network. Awful commercials. Oh, come on!
3 Delivery comes to us from Larry Schwartz, the same man behind other Nicktoons shows like Kappa Mikey and Speed Racer: The Next Generation. Specifically for this show, he based it on his own living situation in a way, living around Manhattan's own Chinatown, giving him inspiration for the setting and base premise of the show, as well as Larry finding inspiration with his love for kung fu movies. The collaboration of a Canadian studio and US studio is what got this split country developed and released show, thanks to the US-based Studio Animation Collective and the Canada-based studio Fat Cat, hitting a release for both Nicktoons and YTV in 2008, and it would eventually go on to release in other territories such as Mexico and the UK in early 2009. The look of the show is pretty unique itself, going for a look that you'd find in some manga, classifying the show as a living graphic novel, and for that comment, I'd have to agree. I think it very much captures that aesthetic greatly. Larry's other show, Speed Racer: The Next Generation, would premiere the month before 3 Delivery would, so for the initial commercial releases of those Speed Racer episodes, there would be some slick little promos for 3 Delivery that would be attached. They'd only be a couple minutes long, but it would get you into what 3 Delivery was and to be ready for the premiere of this new show shortly on the Nicktoons Network. It's not uncommon to see some creator have multiple shows on one network that even may be on the air at the same time, but to see how close in release these 2 shows were specifically seems like a nightmare to manage. But nevertheless, 3 Delivery was coming, but there were still several other shorts, with 11 being made in total, that were to be aired at a different date, with the bulk of them to come out sometime in 2009. But on June 27, 2008, 3 Delivery would be released, and it was a very interesting show. Earlier this year, I covered both American Dragon Jake Long and The Life and Times of Juniper Lee, 2 similar shows that premiered around the same time that had a lot of similarities in their premise. And honestly, this show does have some loose similar vibes, plot points and themes that you can kind of see in both of the other shows. Yes, I am saying that not only did Disney and Cartoon Network have a similar show, now Nickelodeon technically had one too. It's kind of funny how that works. What I really liked about the show is the animation specifically, the way the show looks. It just oozes that early to mid 2000s grunge that I sometimes just miss so greatly. Mixing that in with the city environments in Chinatown really aid in a visually pleasant looking show. While you can see the stiffness from the similar flash techniques found in Larry's other show, Kappa Mikey, and just like that show, it adds a level of charm to that. While it does date the show a bit, it equals out to be a stylized show. It's never about how much money you spend on something. It's about how you use the tools you have to the best of their and your abilities. The color palette for me stands out with a lot of muted darker colors mostly lining the world, allowing for the bright splashes of colors like reds, greens, yellows, and blues to pop out really well. My only main issue I guess I would find myself having with this series is the premise itself, or to be more specific, the magical cookbook aspect. While I get that food is the big theme here for the show, I don't think it needed to be ingrained in the plot with a magical cookbook and the pages of it that they are looking for. I would have liked to see the food be this relatable everyday thing that our main trio have to do for their job and make deliveries, and this magic element be about something else. One of these factors feels a bit tacked on. Is it the food delivery part or the magical part? Now, with that being said, I don't hate it. In fact, I quite enjoyed a lot of what this show had to offer. The plots feel like they move at a fast pace. The action is a lot of fun, and the setting is really nice to explore. While it may not be this big genre-pushing show, it feels like it knows exactly what it is and what it wants. The family aspect is highly important and probably one of the major reasons I liked it as much as I did. Maybe it just needed more room to grow. Maybe it needed to change the flow up a bit as the series progressed, but unfortunately, it didn't last long enough to truly get its footing settled.
This is serious indeed.
Hey, you! Come to Woo's Garden for free delivery! Come for free delivery. Stay for the fried rice.
The show would end up lasting for one full season, consisting of 26 episodes ending 1 year after its original premiere. But why? It seemed to be doing quite well on the Nicktoons Network, with both episode 1 and 2 for their premieres both doing nearly 600,000 in viewership. But with episode 3, it would jump to a solid 1.5 million watchers and became the #1 show on the network at that time, only to be dethroned by Wolverine and the X-Men when that show would premiere, and then again falling down to the 3rd spot after Avatar: The Last Airbender would make its way onto the network. The show even ends on a pretty strong moment for the series with a major reveal that changes at least one major dynamic of the show. And there could have been so many more stories to tell here, build upon the rising action of the first season to deliver a second season that could evolve with the show itself. While no specific reasons were ever truly detailed, there's only really speculation of what could have caused this or that. Some may try and point the fingers at the plot and the setting of the show being a concern based on any potential cultural twisting that wouldn't properly reflect its source. But the show did have an Asian American culture consultant to help along the process, and there weren't really any complaints, issues, or moments at that time to bring up. So I don't think that there would be any reason to pull the plug on the show, as these type of issues would have been behind the scenes and handled before the show would ever come out, or heck, even be greenlit. But what I think could be one little thread of reasoning for this is that Nickelodeon has a notorious record with how they they handle a lot of their shows, ones that are not the Fairly Odd Parents, SpongeBob SquarePants, or the Rugrats. But even more so is if it's an action cartoon, something they barely ever have an interest in. And it sucks because when they do, we get some great cartoons or ones that have great potential, but Nick tends to quickly move past a lot of them and eyes shows that are more comedy focused first, rather than deep story and action, which there is nothing wrong with that. The network just has an interest in what they have an interest in. I just wish a lot of these other shows also had a chance as well. And also, if they feel one show is in any way, and I mean in the littlest of a percent like any other show that they have, it usually turns into whichever is performing better at the moment will be the one that sticks around, at least for a little bit longer. But this is all really just conjecture and how I've seen things handled by Nickelodeon while growing up. The fact remains though that there is a reason a lot of people consider this one of, if not, the most forgotten cartoon from Nicktoons. It's truly a shame as it may be one of the most sleeper hits the network had. Sure, it didn't hit the numbers other shows were hitting, but it had that #1 spot with over 1 million viewers. That has to count for something. But in their eyes, I guess not. If you've ever seen this show or faintly remember it, it is definitely worth your time to invest in its one season. It was a fun show that had some really cool characters and some great stylized action. But what are your thoughts on this show if you have seen it and do remember it? Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Later.